Hello, welcome to the Live Reality Games podcast. And my name is Steven, and I'm back with more Surviving Reelfoot, Fowler's Point coverage. And with me today, I have Drew. Drew, how are you doing?
I'm great. I've been better. Having to relive the trauma that was surviving Reelfoot might make for an interesting morning for me. No, I'm great. I'm excited to be here. How are you today, Stephen?
It's been a stressful week, so this is definitely going to be a highlight to the capstone of it all. So Drew, I want to first kind of ask, like, you are a live reality games expert. You've interviewed me, and I'm looking forward to repaying the favor of interviewing you. You helped host the Victory House Mole podcast. Tell me about your background and experience with live reality games.
So I started watching Survivor with my parents growing up. My mom was a really big fan. I remember she started watching from season one. When season one came out, I was only like 5 years old, so I didn't watch it with her. But I started watching, I think the first season I watched actually was All Stars.
Mm-hmm.
And I watched that live and I loved it. Just like the mechanics of it and like the competitive nature. And so I got kind of hooked from that and watched all of the seasons kind of as they aired from there. And then recently, within the past couple of years, have gone back and like become a super fan. So Survivor is primarily what I watch. I also watched Big Brother growing up. As far as other live reality games, I mean, this was my first live reality game that I played in. I've played in a couple of games that were one-day games, if you count those.
I count those.
Yeah, so I've played in a couple of those, but most of them were through the school that I went to for undergrad,
Mm-hmm.
which is LU, which LRG covers Survivor LU. I hosted 9 seasons while I was there,
Okay.
while I went to school there. Yeah, so I'm used to hosting. But those were also just one-day games. Now they do semester-long games like most colleges do. But yeah, like growing up, I was really into Survivor, and I remember like when we go to like family reunions and stuff, all my cousins knew that I really liked Survivor, and so they come to me and be like, "Can we play Survivor?" I'm like, "Fine, but y'all are gonna be no, literally." I would be like, "That's fine, but y'all are gonna be mad when we have to vote somebody out, so we're only gonna be able to do this for so whatever." Like we would do like challenges and stuff like that, and then all my cousins would get mad when I would vote them out. So
Man, I'm just like, that's why I've been so scared to play Survivor with like friends or family, just because like I did you ever see the Survivor board game?
I've seen it. I've never played it.
So I had that growing up, and like I got my family to play it once or twice, and people would get pretty mad. Like I tried to bribe my youngest brother to vote with me, and like nothing good came from it whatsoever.
Yeah, no, it was always really fun because my mom's side of the family, they were all really into Big Brother, and so like when I get with those cousins, they'd always want to play Big Brother, and then with my dad's side of the family, they knew that I really liked Survivor, and so those cousins always wanted to play Survivor. So
Mhm.
every family function I went to, I was gaming one way or another.
So sounds like your role mostly has been as a host of this, right?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, I played one of the seasons that I hosted in college. I played in like the twist of the season was that I was playing in it and not hosting it. Like I wasn't in charge of any of the casting or anything, but none of the cast knew that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and yeah, that was fine. I was merge boot. But I mean, other than that, just like a couple of casual one days, I'd never done any other live reality games, and I'm much more used to hosting. Like I host online games, not long term orgs, but like minis.
Mm-hmm.
I've hosted plenty of those, but yeah, hosting's where most of my experience is.
Do you feel like having hosted these games and having seen games play out that's helped you and prepared you, or like giving you a perspective that's unique?
You know, I think it definitely. I don't know that it helped, but I think it definitely gives me a perspective that not many other people had.
Mm-hmm.
Because I get to see the dynamics that occur, and I've gotten to see recurring things that lead to getting people voted out, and behind the scenes stuff that you maybe wouldn't get to see on
Mm-hmm.
other college survivors, just because I've had that experience. Clearly it didn't help out much here, but I mean, yeah, I will say it's always really fun to get to hear all of the players' perspectives, kind of unfiltered, unedited, in the moment. So that's always really fun, and I think that helps to, for me, it did help me a little bit. See, one of my friends told me before going out there, they said every day you need to stop and you need to place yourself in each of your tribe mates' perspectives and think, what do they need to do to advance?
Mm-hmm.
And so I will say that is something I was able to do, and I think that's probably why I realized like a day before I was voted out that I was going to be voted out, is because I was like, this person probably doesn't like me very much.
Well, coming into these games, a lot of times it's a question of like, how forthright do you want to be, or how much of your background do you want to maybe play down? Like, do you want people to know you're a Master Survivor super fan? I mean, I personally feel as soon as you step into a live reality game, you have ascended super fandom, right? Because that is the mark of a super fan. But like, still, like, there's a little bit like, how much do I want to give away? And so, were you open with your experience at LU and Survivor and Big Brother and hosting?
I was not. So my goal in coming into this game was to plan out how I was going to do for like the first 2 or 3 hours, and then plan for nothing else after that.
Mm-hmm.
So I did a lot of planning as far as like how I'm going to pitch my personality to my tribe, what I'm going to tell my tribe I do for work, like all this kind of stuff. And I had things planned out with friends. Like I had conference calls with friends where I was like, should I wear jeans or should I wear track pants in the pre-games? Like, I was like, I need to look as non-threatening as possible. I need to just look like this cool guy who's just here to have fun and like whatever. So like a lot of things from early on in the game were pretty meticulously planned, and then obviously I spiraled. But no, so I went in, and I mean, all my friends and I agreed, like, if I'm in this game, I am a fan. So I can't go in and be like, oh, I've never seen Survivor. And I would never be able to pull that off anyway. I like talking about Survivor too much. So what I told my tribe was that I had watched every season growing up with my, I believe I told them with my great-grandparents, which is not a lie, but not true. They used to watch it. And so I would watch it with them. But I didn't like grow up watching it with them. But we talk about it casually. And then I told them that my roommate is a super fan and that we watched through all the seasons again in quarantine, which is true, except for it was the reverse. I'm the super fan and I got him to watch them all in quarantine. So that's what I told them about my Survivor experience. I told them I had never done any LRGs before, which I guess is kind of true. And I told them I had never done any ORGs, which is kind of also true because I've never done any long-term ORGs. So that's what I told them as far as my Survivor experience. And then like around camp, there was a lot of super fans that were open about being super fans. I was like, darn, I wish I didn't lie because now I can't go back on that. So like we're in camp, and Josh and Sharif and Julia and Megan and Carly they're all talking about Survivor players, and I'm like, okay, I can participate in these conversations, but I can't like give too much away. And so I do things like where I'd be like, oh, who's the guy that won the season that Cerise in? And like they would be like, oh, Aris. And I'm like, yeah, I remember him. Like just to like try to maybe pivot I don't know. That I would do stuff like that and hope that it worked, or like I didn't, or something like that here or there. And I don't think that really at the end of the day that had any impact on anything, but I just didn't want people knowing that like coming in like, yeah, I can name every player, like I can name like whatever, all these things. I just didn't want to be the biggest fan in the room, and it turned out that like by going in with the game plan that I had, I might have actually been one of the smallest fans in the room, because I know Barbara also wasn't huge into Survivor. So it was kind of like me and her and then everybody else.
So talk to me about any other preparation you did coming to the game, right? We talked about like, the appearance and like how to portray your fandom, but was there anything else you did?
I did. So starting January 1st, I decided that I was going to do a 5K every day, and I did a 5K every day leading up to the game. I lost 40 pounds leading up to the game. Yeah. I really, really watched my food intake. I lowered my metabolism the 2 weeks before the game, so I required less food. And that really helped, I think, because there was never a point that I was, and keep in mind, I mean, I was only there 3 days, but there was never a point where I was hungry or I felt like I needed food. So I do think that that was helpful. What else did I do to prep? Um, I went back and like glanced through some of Reelfoot's past stuff, especially past challenges,
Mm-hmm.
because I wanted to know what kind of challenges to prep for.
Mm-hmm.
I lied about my job, kind of. Again, I went with like half truths for a lot of things.
Mm-hmm.
So for my job, I went in and I just told my tribe that I'm a composer, which is true.
Mm-hmm.
I told them that I had a bachelor's degree in music composition, which is not true. I have a master's in composition.
Mm-hmm.
And then I also certified by the North Carolina Board of Pharmacy, and I'm starting school for nutrition and dietetics. So like I left out the second half of that. And I know I'm not the only one on my tribe who lied about my job.
Mm-hmm.
Julia lied about her job too.
Because I have Julia listed as a community manager in the wiki.
She works for Congress.
Wow. Okay.
Some capacity. Yeah. So she lied a little bit about her job, or that was her old job, and she's starting like the week after Reelfoot, she started the new job. Yeah. What else did I do to prep? I mean, I just talked with a lot of people who have done LRGs before, especially people who have done like the semester-long college games. I talked to a lot of people who either won or made it very far in those about how they connected with people within the first couple weeks. Because I knew, and I think most of my friends knew, that going in, my social game was going to be my biggest asset, because I'm not an in shape really person. Like I don't really exercise. Like even the 5K that I did every day, like more than half the time it was just walking, because I'm lazy and I work all the time. And so like I don't know. I feel like I'm really likable. I'm really fun. I'm really like, I'm not laid back, but I'm like casual, if that makes sense. Like I'm a very casual person. Like let's just hang out and chill, and like it's not that serious, whatever. But I don't know, that I think my social game actually ended up being my downfall. So
I have a question from Pete Morgan. Did you want to come in and be a villain? Was that something you were actually thinking about?
Oh yes. Okay. So in the pregame for my application video and for my interviews, I was like, I really need to show these people my personality, but I want to exaggerate it a little bit and have fun, especially because I had met Parker before and I had briefly met Pete before, even though I don't think he remembered at that point that I had briefly met him before. And so I went in and I pitched myself, not as a villain, but like as a villain. Like I went in extremely cocky, which is part of my personality. I'm a very confident person. I'm a very bold person. And when I'm good at something, I can be cocky. And I went into my pregame thinking that I was going to be able to pull that off. And then I got in the game and realized that wasn't going to work. And that, like, in all of my prep, I knew that that wasn't going to work, and that I had to be likable, and that people had to want me as a number. My goal going in was to make it so that as many people wanted me as a vote on their side as possible. And you can't really be a villain and do that unless you're being nice to everybody's face and then talking crap about them behind their back, which I did a little bit of. But yes, we had so much fun in the interview. We had so much fun in the interview. Pete was so mean to me, and I was mean to him right back. So,
because I think in the cast assessment, Pete, I think this is what Pete brought up, was just the back and forth you two had.
We did, yeah. Pete would ask me questions to push my buttons, and then I would push his buttons right back, and then we move on to the next one. And I left the interview, and I was like, well, Amos didn't talk very much in the interview because he was putting the twins to bed. And so he was constantly in and out. And I was like, Amos was really quiet. Like, I don't think Amos likes me. And then Parker I had met, but Parker was asking a lot of the logistical questions. And I wasn't getting a lot of feedback from Parker in my interview. But Pete was cutting me off. inserting these little one-liners at me, and I was like, oh, this guy does not like me. And then I was really shocked when I got a call back. I was like, okay, maybe I did something. Here we go.
Whatever you did, it worked.
Well, and Pete told me in my first interview, he said, I see why CBS won't cast you for their show. And I was like, okay, Pete.
So talk to me about a little bit more about how you discovered Reelfoot and why you decided to apply to Reelfoot.
So I had known a couple of players from past seasons. I found out about the show, it would have been last February. So February of 21, I found out about it because I was good friends with Michael O'Rear and Dr. Stan. And I was at an event where it was the two of them, and Frank from season 9 was there. He hadn't played yet. And Chapman was there, and they were all talking about Reelfoot. And I was like, I don't know what this is. They showed it to me. I watched all of O'Rear's season, and I was like, oh, this is really interesting. This is still going on. I'm going to keep this in the back of my head. Fast forward to Victory House Mole, where I interviewed Parker, because Parker was like, what, second or third out? Better than I did. So I interviewed Parker, and after we finished interviewing him on LRG, we talk a little bit, just on StreamYard, but like off stream after the recap. And we're talking about Survivor because he's more of a Survivor guy as well. And he was like, well, I host this Survivor game. And I was like, what? And he's Reelfoot. And I was like, oh, I've heard of that. And he was like, yeah, you should apply. Our applications are open, or they open soon or something. And I was like, okay. And so applications open. I go, I make my video. I really liked my video. I thought my video was amazing. I understand why they wanted to give me an interview, because in my video, I was an absolute jerk, and I think it's so funny. And I went into my interview, and there we are. So it was basically, it was a combination of Parker and O'Rear and Stan.
And so it sounds like coming to the game, you wanted to rely on your social game, and you were hoping to maybe be a little villainous, but you're gonna be pretty flexible post like the first 2-3 hour mark of the game.
Yeah, that was I didn't want to be a villain. Like, I know I have the capability of being a villain, but the thing is about me that I'm a really loyal player, but that's not going to stop me from going into confessionals and talking about how irritated I am with people, because I have an issue where I have a really hard time controlling my facial expressions, and you will know what I'm thinking based on my facial expressions. And so I was like, okay, I really have to control this in game, and in confessionals is when I can go and let it all out. And I think I did do a little bit of that, and I do think that was actually very helpful for me, because there were multiple times in the game where I just wanted to what are you people doing? But I couldn't do that. And well, there was one time where I did, and that's probably what got me voted out, but it's fine. It's fine.
So let's go to the game. So the first thing that ends up happening is there's a schoolyard pick for tribes. And who picked you, and who did you end up picking for the Noga tribe?
I don't remember who picked me. It would have been either Megan or Carly, I believe, that picked me. I was picked towards the middle. So I got picked, and then the other team picked a girl. So when it got back to me, it was down to Dina and Julia. And I was sequestered in a pregame room with Dina. And so we had very baseline conversations. Production was like, don't talk to each other, whatever. But we had whatever. She had offered up some of her Sour Patch Kids or something. Sharif was also in the room with us. No, Sharif offered up Sour Patch Kids. Dina offered up candy, and I had Pringles, and so we were all offering food to each other, but silently, behind Parker's back, because Parker was there. And there was a point where Sharif was like, oh, I'm gonna go brush my teeth one last time, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go fix my hair. And so we're in the bathroom together, and the door's open, and we're both I'm a rule breaker. I don't know. So anyways, we get to the mat, and I'm like, I've been in this room with Dina for an hour, and I recognize Dina from Sequester. I had never met Dina before. Dina was the only person in the game who I had recognized. So I was hopeful that no one had recognized me from like the sequester minis or anything. So I was going to pick Dina. But then Sharif comes up behind me, who was, like I said, also in our pregame room. And Sharif goes, no, she talked too much in the pregame room. She broke the rules too much. Pick the other girl. Dina.
So the Sour Patch and Pringles alliance that never was.
So I was gonna pick Dina, and Sharif told me to pick Julia because the other girl broke the rules too much and she talked too much. So I picked Julia, and little did I know that Sharif and Julia played Survivor New York together.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, Dina would have probably done worse than me on Blue. But yeah, so that's why I ended up picking Julia, is because Sharif knew Julia and wanted me to pick her, and I did not know that. But I trusted Sharif at that point in the game, and I picked Julia because I'm not going to go against what people are telling me to do that early on.
Mm-hmm. Now, one of the first things your tribe has to do is you have to vote for a player. You're not told what or why, just vote a player. And so who'd you end up voting for?
I voted for Julia. I didn't know. I was the only vote for Julia. I didn't know if it would be something good or bad. I think probably the main reason I voted for her is because she was one of the only like 3 people whose names I could remember, because we had briefly gone around and all said our names.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, it was between the only names I could remember were Barbara, Sharif, and Julia. And I was like, well, I'm not voting for Sharif in case it's something bad, because I've just been in a room with him for over an hour. And Barbara was our team captain. And I was like, and I don't want her to get anything more or, less or more spotlight. So I just voted for Julia because she was one of the names that I remembered. One of my best friends' name is Julia. So I was just like, okay, we're on it. And then that actually ended up helping me later in day one, because Julia came up to me later and was like, thank you so much for voting me. Like, it means a lot. I usually get overlooked and stuff like this. And I was like, oh, this is good. Like, we can start a bond over this. So
yeah, so Sebastian ends up winning for your tribe, and this is when you learn that we're seeing a twist return from season 3, where there is a medallion that marks a player, and that player receives a penalty vote. Sebastian ends up giving the medallion to Sharif. Talk to me about your thoughts about this twist.
I had seen the first 2 episodes on YouTube of season 3, so I knew how the twist worked. But I feel for the most part, it's not going to come into effect I had already kind of gamed this twist out in my mind when I saw it on YouTube the first time. For the most part, this twist isn't going to come into effect into the merge, because whoever gets voted off pre-merge is most likely going to be in the minority, or in the merge even, is going to be in the minority. And you're giving a penalty vote against the majority, which could help, but the majority is most likely still going to have the numbers regardless. So it's not going to really make a difference. And I knew that. The only way it was going to make a difference for us is if it was a 4-4. And once I saw that Sharif had that necklace, I knew that it was going to be irrelevant for the first round, because nobody was going to vote Sharif off. And I knew that before we even got to know each other's personalities. I just knew nobody was going to vote Sharif off first.
And so you kind of go straight into your first reward challenge, the memory match challenge. How was that for you?
I consider myself to be a mental player. I'm really good at puzzles. I have a decent memory. I have a better long-term memory than short-term memory. But yeah, we got onto the mat. And I think that's when I made my first mistake, actually, was in this challenge, my first social blunder. And from what I've gathered from each individual that I've talked to that was on my tribe, I wasn't voted off first because of a group reason necessarily. It was more so just individual people each had things that they were like, Drew is one of my 2 or 3 options. And then everybody talking together was like, oh, we have overlap with Drew being the one. And I messed up with Carly here. So Carly and I were talking. We were standing kind of behind everybody else on the mat. This is before the challenge instructions had been given out. And Carly and I were just talking about, I think we were talking about Chicago, because she lives in Chicago and I recently had been to Chicago. So we were just talking about Chicago life, whatever. Meanwhile, everybody else, the other 6, are on the mat in front of us. And Carly and I are talking, and we're talking for 3-4 minutes. And in my head, I'm like, okay, we're separated from the group right now. We need to get back in this. So the conversation comes to a point where there's a long pause and there's no reply or whatever. And instead of like motioning to Carly, like, let's go, like, let's move back up, or like saying like, oh, we should probably rejoin the group, I just stepped away and rejoined the group.
Mm-hmm.
And Carly has told me since then that in that moment, she was like, oh, Drew doesn't like me. Like, Drew doesn't want to work with me because he just left me standing here.
Mm-hmm.
So I unintentionally isolated Carly, you know, right off the bat. And the rest of the time that I was in the game, I think she and I only had one game talk. And it was sketchy. It was a sketchy one at that.
Mm-hmm.
So I messed up that relationship right off the bat. But getting into, and I didn't realize it in that moment. I was just in my head thinking like, okay, she knows that like we have to rejoin the group.
Mm-hmm.
But I should have said something. But oh well. So we get into the planning stage of the memory challenge, and our tribe is kind of like, okay, let's put the people with the best memories towards the end of the lineup, so the people with worse memories can flip more tiles for us in the beginning. So we get in our order. They put me, there were 8 people on our tribe. They put me as number 7. Carly was very confident in her memory ability, so she put herself as number 8. I said that I was confident, so I got put as 7. I think I went out 4 times, and either 2 or 3 of them I got matches, but most of the time it was other people telling me which ones to flip, because I was much worse at that game than I thought I would be. A couple of the times, like 2 of the times I was like, yeah, I know which one it is, but one of the times I was like, I don't know, y'all tell me what to do. And that was, I think, all of us at points were just like, I don't know, and somebody else was like, oh, I randomly like remember this one that was over there. But we did well. I think we got more total matches than the other tribe. This is kind of when we started looking at the other tribe and being like, okay, they have some players over there. And I very quickly realized that we were probably outclassed in most challenge categories by the other tribes. So I was very worried.
So what players in the other tribe were catching your attention early on?
I think as a whole tribe, we kind of were like, James is really good at memory. And obviously we didn't know like people's names, so we had nicknames for some of the people. But I think James, we just called him Glasses Guy. But we were like, oh, he's the one who's going out and getting all the matches. And like from our perspective, he was kind of directing other people. A couple of other people on my tribe recognized Dina, so like we got her name right away. Some other people who stood out, Casey, we were all kind of like, okay, this guy is going to be like the challenge beast of the season. We should be really careful with him. Who else stood out? Ryan stood out to us. Nobody on our tribe knew his name. I think for a while, and I've told Ryan this, so I don't feel bad about saying it, but I think most of our tribe called him Country Bumpkin, because he was wearing like the camo. So we were like, okay, this guy probably has like country boy strength. But yeah, those are the people that stood out the most to us, I think, right off the bat.
So talk to me about that first evening, setting up at camp, getting to know people. How was that?
So we get back. Megan kind of quickly puts herself in a position where she's calling the shots. I mean, basically, we have 2 things that we need to do right away because we already had our water. So the 2 things that we had to do were get a shelter spot picked and get a fire spot picked, because once you have the fire set somewhere, you can't move it. And so we figured that this was one of the first things we needed to do. We also wanted to get a fire going as quickly as possible because we didn't know how long it would take us. So Megan kind of dictates like, okay, we're going to split into 3-ish jobs here. We're going to have people working on the fire. We're going to have people working on the shelter, and we're going to have people getting firewood. But people were not necessarily wanting to fall into line that easily. People started doing their own things in like, oh, the shelter should go over here, and like not consulting the group. And I could tell that was frustrating Megan a little bit. At this point, I was very cool, calm, and collected. And so I was just like, okay, whatever the tribe wants to do, like this is my game plan to come in and be agreeable. We'll see how long that lasts. But Megan was like, at a point, you know, I think Megan was the spearhead of like, guys, we need to together decide a spot for the fire, together decide a spot for the shelter, and then split up. We can't split up into our groups and be making all these individual decisions. And so we all kind of went around and said maybe what strengths we had to offer as far as camp life. And I was like, I can work on the fire. You probably don't want me to be like the number one fire person because I'm relatively inexperienced. I did learn how to make fire with a machete and flint a couple weeks before the game, but I was not very fast. It was taking me like 20 minutes on average to get a fire going. And so I figured other people would probably be more appreciated in that role. And I was like, I can go look for firewood. And so I was put on firewood crew. Turns out that Megan may not have been thrilled that I said not to put me on the fire, though I'm not sure why. That may have been a rumor, but another player, I don't remember who, said that Megan wasn't thrilled that I said I didn't want to work on the fire. So I'm not sure if that was something that was like inflamed by the game. Like, I don't know if that was something that was hyped up or if that was somebody lying to me or what. But yeah, so we get the fire spot. We decide that we want to sleep on the tarp instead of on the ground, which was fine. We kind of lucked into some of our luxury items working together because Sharif had brought a yoga mat like you did, Steven. And that was great because we were able to put that under our hips at night. I brought a towel. A beach towel is my luxury item, so I could use it as a pillow or as a blanket. Barbara's luxury item, she brought a pillow that had 2 waterproof cases on it. And so she took one case off and put all of our toilet paper in it. And so we had like a full-size pillow and then a second full-size pillow that had all the toilet paper in it. Plus, Julia's luxury item, I believe, was a pillow. So we came into the game, you know, with 2 double pillows and then Julia's pillow plus my towel and the yoga mat. So we felt really okay about sleeping arrangements the first night. We kind of spend the rest of the evening setting up camp, getting a bunch of firewood. And then as soon as the sun set, people were ready for bed, which I was kind of surprised by because I was like, I'm not tired at all. This is not going to go well. So, you know, 8:30, 9 o'clock rolls around and people are ready for bed. And we all tried to sleep and it didn't work. At one point, we were all kind of laying there in a row and Megan was like, we're not asleep. Let's go around and all tell about like our families. And then like we'd all go around and say like siblings, parents, whatever. And then Megan would be like, oh, like let's go around and talk about our pets and stuff like that. And so we did that for a little while. And then there was a natural stopping point. We all tried to go to sleep. I think the only person who really slept night one was Sharif. He snored. He got probably 3 or 4 hours in. The rest of us each got anywhere from 0. I know Barbara and Megan have both said that they didn't sleep at all night one. I think maybe Carly and Julia got like an hour. I got probably 20 minutes the first night. It was a lot of up and down. We learned quickly that we did not get enough firewood to last through the night. So there was a point in the middle of the night where we were all awake and we were all looking for firewood, which was a lot more difficult to found when you only have one flashlight and your fire's dying. So there was a point where we were all up looking for firewood. We all did that. We all tried to go back to sleep. It didn't work. Around probably 6 a.m. would be my guess. I was kind of like, hey, let's go up the path to this field and look at the stars because I can see kind of through the trees that there are stars out tonight. And everybody else who was awake for the most part was like, yeah, I'll go. There was one person who was asleep in the shelter. I don't remember who it was. And then Megan was tending the fire and she said, no, I don't want to go. I don't want the fire to go out. And so 5 of us went up, and then later Bash came and joined us. We are still stunned that he managed to find his way there because it was pitch black. But Bash in the game had a vape pen, and his vape pen had a very small blue light at the end. And so like occasionally we'd see like in the distance on the trail a tiny blue light up, and we're like, oh, Bash is coming. And it would just slowly get closer. So that was fun. But yeah, that was a bonding moment where we all went up and looked at the stars, and then the sun came up. And we were like, okay, let's get to work before we have this SOS challenge. Because what we had done for the SOS challenge, once we found out about it, we all knew what it was. We talked through a plan, and we felt very solid on it. Josh is a visual artist, so he had a lot of input about color theory. And then Carly actually also gave some really good input and ideas about like outlining everything with the white toilet paper to make it pop more. That was all Carly. And then Josh was really good about like, we need red, like we need something to grab people's attention.
So were you having any strategic conversations that end the first day where you kind of like, hey, let's take things slow and figure these people out?
My plan was to quickly get in alliances, but not be the one who's forming them, because I didn't want to seem like I was in control. Every single one day that I've ever played, I've had the issue of I get voted out because I'm seen as having too much control. And so I was like, I'm going to let other people appear that they have the control pre-swap. My goal pre-swap was just to form relationships. I didn't really want to do a ton of strategy. I had a quick talk with Julia, like I mentioned earlier, where she came up to me and she was like, thanks for voting for me. I appreciate that you wanted me to have this power. Like, we're good. I had talked to Sharif because he and I had, made a lot of extended eye contact leading up to the game. And we were like, yeah, obviously we're good. Like, we're quickly number ones with each other. Like, this is ride or die. And then I'm not sure I talked to anyone else strategically on day one. I might have had a quick conversation with Bash. What I would do is, instead of pushing strategy talks, when I would get with people quickly one-on-one, I'm like, I know we don't have time for a full strategic conversation here. So I just ask people, like, how are you feeling?
Oh, no.
And I allowed... Oh, just cut out.
Yeah, it froze for a couple seconds. So let
me switch to my laptop now that my Wi-Fi is actually working.
Okay.
Yeah, give me 1 second, actually, and make sure that it'll work.
That was seamless.
Yay for working Wi-Fi.
Woo! All right. So you were saying that you were having these small conversations, or you're saying like, how are you feeling?
How are you feeling? And I would let the other person who I was talking to dictate whether that went to strategy or personal. And that was a strategy of mine. And so I do remember having a conversation with Bash where I asked him how he was feeling, and he was like, he went completely non-strategic with the conversation. He's like, yeah, I'm feeling good. Like, we just got to get this firewood. I'm ready to go. I had a similar conversation. I believe it was with Barbara, and Barbara said that she was feeling fine. She was excited for the game, but she was nervous because she didn't want to be seen as the old woman. But yeah, sometimes when I would ask people that question, they would go straight into strategy, and we'd have, strategy talks. And sometimes I'd ask people and they'd just be like, I have a headache today. And that was a strategy for me to where they could take it either personally or they could take it strategically.
So coming into day two, who were the players you were feeling most comfortable with, or like kind of saying like, I think I want to be in an alliance with this person?
So day two was a mess for me. I was very aware that coming into the game, one of the biggest things that I would have to deal with condition-wise was lack of sleep. I'm not a person who functions well on lack of sleep, and I'm aware of this. I get really, really emotionally whatever when I don't have a lot of sleep. And day two, the moment the sun came up, I was in a bad mood. And I was like, this is not going to be good. But we did the SOS challenge first thing in the morning, pretty much. We won. We were very confident we were going to win. We felt really good about our idea. But yeah, I think I had a confessional maybe that morning. I felt really good with Sharif at that point. I had still planned one of my goals going into the game was find a shield. And I was like, well, Sharif's a great shield because everybody already thinks that he's going to be good at everything, because everybody talked. We'd also had a talk at camp the night before about what our challenge strengths and weaknesses were. Yeah. So everybody liked Sharif from all the conversations that we had the night before. I liked Sharif. I was like, okay, I have maybe more of a connection than everybody else to him because we had been in the pregame room and we had connected so quickly. I felt good with Julia, but I didn't want to, force duos. I didn't want to, you don't want to make a final two necessarily. some people want final twos right off the bat.
Mhm.
For my game, did not, and so I was going to wait on that. And then I felt okay about Bash, but there was not, at that point in the day, there was not a solid group that I was like, oh, let's pull this group together, because again, I didn't want to be the one to do it. I just wanted to have a bunch of one-on-ones with people.
Yeah, you mentioned that the concern of lack of sleep. Did you have a lot of outdoor experience prior to Reelfoot?
No, I
Okay.
never even. I've been camping like maybe once or twice when I was like 10. I'm terrified of snakes, and I'm a 3-time-a-day showerer at home. So like, I was a little weary, but once I got out there, it was fine. Again, maybe if I was out there the whole time, I would have had more issues with actual survival. But I was fine being dirty. I was fine sleeping on the ground, as long as I had water, and if I had sleep, I would have been fine. But honestly, the survival aspect was like completely on the back burner for me. The only part of survival that I think really affected anything was, for some reason, we got in our heads that we needed to have a bunch of logs to sit on around the fire. And so there were multiple times where me, Sharif, Josh, and Bash would go out and we'd look for these big logs, and we'd carry these huge trees back. And then we'd get back and Megan would be like, no, we can't use that one. So like we were expending a lot of energy bringing logs into camp, and I'm sure they found a use for it at some point. Like they were probably able to break them down over like rocks or other trees and use them as firewood. But we expended a lot more energy probably than we should have at certain points on logs. But yeah, what were you going to ask?
No, I guess how much were idols and advantages in the forefront of your mind in this game? And we'll get into that more later when you get your idol clue, but how much was that something you were concerned about coming in the game and starting day 2?
I knew they would be there. I didn't want to just go off and look without, knowing where I was looking. I did make sure to keep an eye out for obvious things, like obvious trees, obvious, rocks, knowing where tree mail is. Stuff like that, so I could have in my mind like, okay, this is a pretty clear marker. But I am, like I said, I was terrified of snakes, and so I didn't really look for the idol until I got a clue, because I didn't feel like there was a point. There weren't that many obvious, landmarks around our campsite that I was like, okay, this is obvious for me to go look here. Plus on like day 1, there was a tree that I felt like was like, okay, this tree is pretty, it stands out. And they found a spider in it that was like this big. Like, and I was like, I'm not afraid of spiders or anything, but I'm like, I'm not just going to go like stick my hand in places. Like, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to take time and be prepared and, bring a 5-foot-long stick to poke around first. And I have to make sure that I can have the machete with me and like not have anybody else worrying about where the machete is. And so I knew that if I was going to idle hunt, it would take a lot more preparation. And so I did not idle hunt at all. There were multiple times in camp, maybe not the morning of day 2, but like towards the end of day 2, and especially the morning of day 3, where both Barbara and Bash, independently of each other, like Bash would just say like, hey guys, I'll be back in 15 minutes. I'm going to look for the idol. And Barbara would be like on the path, and people would be like walking past her, and they'd be like, what are you doing, Barbara? And she's like, looking for idols. I just can't find this stupid idol. And like they were both very open about it, which we all thought was very interesting. One person who I know was in kind of the front of everybody's mind as having looking for idols was Megan, because Megan kind of took over the role of fire tender. And so Megan would go off a lot and bring back firewood, but she was gone so often. I don't know if she actually was looking for idols, but a lot of people had Megan's name in their mind as far as someone who is plausibly looking for idols, just because she was out getting firewood so much more than everyone else.
And and it seemed like as the season progressed, people became more and more like Megan has the idol, because she was searching for so much firewood, and she ended up not. So
yeah,
that's interesting.
I think I said in one of my confessionals, like Megan and I did not click. We never clicked in the game. She just was very like, I think the phrasing I used was like, she's very direct and she's very like, she almost came across to us as old school in the way that she just was focusing on like the survival aspect. Like she was on top of like making the shelter as good as possible, keeping the fire going, making sure we had enough firewood. She was on us all the time about firewood. Like she was in charge of the fire. She kind of took on one of the leadership roles at camp. She rubbed me the wrong way, and I was very clear about that in confessionals, but I could tell that she wasn't necessarily rubbing anybody else the wrong way. We just didn't click in the game. And she has like a day one confessional where she's like, Drew's personality, I don't know. And like, I think mine on day one was like, Megan, I just don't see myself connecting with her. So we did not click right off the bat. And it's not that we dislike each other or anything. We just, our personalities are, I think I had a talk with her at one point. Our personalities are very similar, but very different at the same time because we're both very direct. We're both pretty assertive. But she does it very like quietly and seriously. And I'm very like loud and like, I don't know what a good word, like, I guess, I don't know, fun. Like, I'm just like, let's have fun. Like less serious, more casual, but louder. And yeah, that's just what happened with that. We were all kind of looking at Megan as far as somebody who may have the idol.
Talk about your relationship with Josh.
I don't know that there was a relationship with Josh, really. Josh and I had talked a little bit. Josh and I came in together when we first arrived at the cabin, the Ponderosa cabin. Josh, Barbara, and myself were all driven in together by Pete. And Josh and I had sat beside each other and like we made eye contact. So again, I was like, anything is fine. So I was like, okay, me, Josh, and Sharif quickly can become a 3 because I knew that Josh and Sharif were connecting. And I was like, cool, we can be the 3. I don't care if I'm on the bottom of the 3, which I clearly was. Like, I knew that in that trio, I was number 3. But I was like, that's fine. As long as it gets me to a swap, I don't care. I don't know. Like with Josh, I felt like there were times where we would have conversations in a group setting. And I was just like, I don't know that I have much overlap with Josh. Like, we were both huge Survivor fans, but I couldn't talk about Survivor with him because of the strategy that I had decided to take with that. Josh and I, you know, I think it was a situation where I felt okay with him and he was apparently scheming behind my back. I did not know that at the time. We're getting to where I'm figuring out that people are scheming about me. But I don't know. I was very neutral on Josh, I think, in the game, because I just didn't see much personal overlap between myself and him. I think in general that the tribe that I was put on was a very serious tribe. And I think Carly and I have had a lot of discussions about that because we were on pre-jury together. The tribe that we were placed on was very serious. And Carly actually has a very similar personality to me. And so when Carly got out of the game and joined us in pre-jury and she came out and she was like this loud, like super direct, like assertive, like out there, outspoken person, I was like, what is going on? Because that is not at all what she was giving to us in the game. And Carly was smart and figured out that on this tribe of serious people, she might have to be serious and be quiet. I know, Angela, I'm so pressed. I don't know if anybody has mentioned what the tribes were supposed to be pregame, but I literally, okay, so the tribes pregame before someone had to drop out the morning of, switch me and Keenan and switch Storm and Sharif, and those were the tribes. So I would have been, yeah, so it would have been me and Sharif and like all of Kwonu, like would have been a tribe. And I'm like, wow, I would have been with the people who were actually like having fun. No, but I felt like our tribe was very serious and good for Carly for catching on to that. The only people who I think on our original tribe who were trying to like have fun were me and Bash. But Bash was doing his own thing. I was not willing to do my own thing. So there were lots of times around camp where I would like try to interject in other people's conversations to like be a part of it, but they were talking about something I was disinterested in. Or they would talk about Survivor a lot. There was a lot of food talk around camp, which was like fine. Again, I wasn't really hungry, but like, I don't know. There were times where I could tell Carly was trying to start conversations. Like she'd be like, "Oh, like imagine that we're all baseball or softball players. Like, what would be your walk-up song?" And like me and Carly would answer, and then everybody else would just be like, "I don't know." And Carly would look at me and be like, and I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't know. It was just a very serious try. Megan was very focused on the fire. Josh and Sharif, there were multiple points where like they would talk about things that I just like could not relate to the conversation about. Like there was a point on day 2 where me, Josh, and Sharif were all laying on the tarp. Everybody else was doing something, and the 3 of us were laying there, and they're talking about Star Wars. And they just keep talking about Star Wars. And it's like 45 minutes into a discussion about Star Wars. And, you know, I've seen the original 6 Star Wars, but I've only seen them like once or maybe twice. And I like don't have an opinion on anything Star Wars. And I'm laying there and I'm trying to like put myself into the conversation. And they're like, "Oh, Drew, you're not really a Star Wars fan, are you?" And I was like, "No." And they're like, "Oh, have you watched the Marvel movies?" And I'm like, "No." So like they're talking about this stuff, and the production comes down into the camp, and they're like, "Who wants to film a confessional?" I'm like, "Me, please, get me out. Like anything, I'll do it. I don't care. Send me into a solo challenge. I don't care. Just get me out of here." And yeah, I think that at that point, which was midday of day 2, was when I knew that like something fishy's going on here, because people weren't including me in conversations. I was present, but I wasn't being included. And there were a lot of times also throughout day 2 where day 1, I think Barbara and I were pretty chill with each other. We slept next to each other in the shelter on night 1, which doesn't really mean anything because we all just kind of like fell into place. But like she and I had talked because we laid beside each other. Day 2, Barbara stopped having personal conversations with me. And she stopped making eye contact with me. This was especially following the slip and slide challenge that we did, and the boat reward. I noticed that Barbara was just not conversing with me. And I was like, okay, this clearly means that my name is being brought up. I don't know if Barbara's the one doing it, but I'm noticing that there is a difference in social standing. And I'm also keenly aware, if you listen to my confessionals, that 2 things are going on. One, I am emotionally unwell because I'm exhausted. I was fine. I was just like, I'm not going to be able to control my emotions as easily, which was very clear through the day. And then 2, I realized that I was talking too much. And I said that in confessionals. But because I was so exhausted, it was like, I would say in confessionals, like, I need to stop talking. Like, I need to stop being bossy. I need to stop asserting myself. And then I get back to camp, and it was like, I physically could not stop myself. Just from exhaustion. Like I couldn't not be myself, because that's who I am. You know, I was raised in a very loud, abrasive family, and like we love that about each other. Like we interrupt each other, we yell over top of each other, like we get very excited, we're very loud, we're very animated, and like that's who I am as a person. And in a game where I'm trying to intentionally not be that and just go under the radar in the pre-swap, but I'm exhausted, so I'm gonna be myself, it just didn't work out. And I could tell that there were a couple of people, namely Megan, that I was rubbing the wrong way. Megan just didn't like how, I think, loud and boisterous I was, which is fine. We'll get to my ultimate losing decision when we get there. But yeah, I don't know. That was a very long tangent about a question that probably was not even related.
No, you hit a lot of points. I kind of wanted to walk through a couple of remaining players we hadn't talked about, and you hit Barbara, you hit Josh, and kind of the evolving relationship with those players, especially you, Josh, Sharif, the trio. So let's talk a little bit about the challenges, right?
Yes.
And so you win the SOS challenge, right? Your next challenge ends up being the slip and slide challenge. How was that for you?
Terrifying. So I, like I said, don't consider myself a physical person. I'm not athletic. I never have been. I don't consider myself to be in shape particularly. So we get there, we find out it's one-on-one matches. First of all, I've never been in a kayak before. And so I was expecting fully to get in and flip and struggle. And like, I knew mentally in my mind, I know how to paddle and like how the paddling works, but I had never actually done it before. But what I did know is that I would do really well on the ring toss portion. I'm pretty coordinated, I want to say, for the most part. So we get in our huddle and we're like, okay, it's 1st to 9. Let's put all of our strong people towards the beginning. And the person who we think is going to be the strongest in the first position. And they're like, everybody looks to Sharif. And Sharif's like, fine, I'll go first. And then they were like, okay, 2 and 3 need to be Bash and Drew. And I'm like, wait, I'm being looked at as a strong physical presence here. Interesting. So I think, I don't know, I either ended up going 3rd or 4th maybe against Keenan. I was terrified. I had kind of strategized how I was going to go down the slip and slide to most easily get into the kayak. So I get up there. Keenan walks up. We start like soaping up or whatever. I reach over to shake his hand. He introduces himself. I introduce myself. And they're like, okay, we're going to get the kayaks ready so you guys can just talk for a second. And so I look over and I was like, I've never been in a kayak before. I'm really scared. And Keenan looks over at me and goes, I'm from Canada, so I've done this a lot. And I was just like, great, cool. So we go. Keenan tries to derail my kayak, and I ended up derailing him. At some point, my ring gets knocked off the tower, so I'm a little delayed getting back, but I come up and make it in one shot. That is probably the thing that I'm the most proud of myself in the game, because I did not think that I would be good at challenges. I thought that challenges were actually going to be a downfall of mine unless it was like a puzzle or something, because I do really well at puzzles. So that was a big shock for me. Like pre-game, they sent us all this survey where we had to rank ourselves from one, like on different, rate ourselves, not rank ourselves. Rate ourselves in different aspects, like visual puzzles, endurance, running, all this stuff. And for most of the physical things, I placed myself pretty low because I'm not like, I don't go to the gym really, whatever. So I was a little shocked at that, and I was really happy with myself. So.
Well, your tribe ends up winning this reward, and this reward basically gives you a boat ride across Reelfoot Lake with a guide and a sack lunch. How was that?
It was very nice. When we got there, they had indoor bathrooms, and so we all kind of lined up so we could, go in, wash our hands, wash our faces, fix our hair, whatever. We go on the reward. We get our sack lunch, which is like half a peanut butter sandwich, a small bag of chips, a Powerade, and like a pack of peanuts. I was not hungry, but as soon as I had food in front of me, I was just like, okay, it's all going in one bite. And I obliterated it, and then took a power nap afterwards because none of us had slept the night before. Again, there was no chance I was making it through that boat ride without sleeping. Bash, I know Bash slept as well, and I think a couple of other people slept. I was fully expecting that someone probably got a hidden immunity idol clue in their lunch, but I had no way of telling who without turning around and, watching everybody. But I was in the front of the boat, so I couldn't do that without people, seeing. I knew I didn't get it, and Bash was sitting beside me, and I knew he didn't get it. So that's all I had. If there was one, the reward was great. We get back, and it's towards the end of the afternoon. At that point, it's probably around 5 o'clock. We're thinking, let's take a nap. We're all exhausted. We've had what was it, 2 challenges today?
Yeah, so you've done so far the SOS and the Slip and Slides challenge.
Yeah, we're like, we've had a couple challenges today. We might have one more, so let's take naps, and then we'll wake up. We'll eat rice for dinner maybe, and then go to our last challenge. We are quickly cut off with tree mail for another challenge, so we did not get to take naps or anything. And we go into the challenge where I lost the game.
Yeah, so this is the Floor is Lava challenge, where you have to direct your tribe across balance beams to memorize a pattern, then go back and deliver the pattern to the puzzle solver.
Yep, and this is where I solidified myself as being voted out first. From all the conversations I've had, this is it. And it makes sense. So we get there. I immediately, seeing the crates and the planks, knew what the challenge was going to be. I knew how to tackle this challenge. We did end up using, for the most part, my strategy. For each of the past challenges, we had someone step up and kind of be like, for the memory challenge, Carly really stepped up and was like, guys, this is how we should do it order wise. For the SOS challenge, Josh really stepped up, and Carly as well, and said, like, this is what we need to do. For the slip and slide challenge, Sharif and Bash stepped up, and Megan stepped up a lot. And we're like, hey, this is a strategy here. For this challenge, I felt very confident that I knew what to do. And so I was like, hey, guys, can I kind of take charge on this one? And they were like, okay, tell us what to do. And we were standing in a circle. Keep in mind, I'm exhausted at this point. And also, I was starting to get frustrated with certain people on the tribe. And I was like, hey, guys, just for an example, so I can show you visually what we're doing, can we all get in a line, please? And nobody moved. And I was like, hey, guys, get in a line. And nobody moved. And I was like, guys, please get in a line so I can show you what we're doing. We only have like 30 seconds left to talk. And like, I yelled at them. I was like, guys, get in a line. Like, I'm trying to show you how we can win this. And everybody was just like, get on with it. Like, come on, tell us. And I was just like, okay, it'd be easier if we were in a line, but like, this is what we're going to do. And I walked everybody through what we're going to do. We get through the challenge. We win somehow. We had a lot of issues in that challenge because people were just not listening. Not to me. People weren't listening to Carly, because Carly was put in charge of telling everybody how to memorize the grid at the end. And we got down there, and, she's taking time to process what everybody's doing, but people are starting to step in and get snappy. Like, what am I doing? What am I doing? What am I doing? Carly's like, guys, please, like, give me a minute. We get back, we finish, we win somehow. Really not sure how we won, but I'm very thankful that at least I was given that opportunity to lead, because we would have lost, I think, had we been as chaotic as we were in the memory portion of that challenge. But we got back to camp. I apologize to everybody for snapping at them, but from the conversations I've had post game, like, my name was in the air with like a couple of others, but that moment was just like, yep, okay, tribe unity. Like, we can't have people snapping at us, which is valid. It's a very valid reason, especially considering there were a couple of people on the tribe who didn't necessarily like me at that point anyways. I know I have a strong personality, and I expect, you can't expect when you bring 17 strangers together that everybody's going to like each other. And so I knew that there were people who weren't going to like me, and that's okay. I don't feel bad for being myself and people not liking me. But having the combination of a couple people not liking me and snapping during that challenge, I think was just like, okay, yep, it's going to be Drew. And I knew it. Leading up to that challenge, I knew my name was probably mentioned because, Barbara, like I said, Barbara wasn't talking to me all day. And then Julia and Carly hadn't initiated any further conversations with me, which I found very surprising from Julia, because Julia had been the one who approached me the day before. I didn't approach her. And I hadn't had any conversations really with Megan at that point as well. And so I knew, I haven't talked to Carly, haven't talked to Megan. Barbara and Julia aren't talking to me. My name's out there. So I knew I had to get to work and figure something out. And so we get back from that challenge. Again, we had not taken naps yet. We figured that would be our last challenge of the day. We're like, let's take naps, and then we'll figure out if we're going to eat rice or not. Megan and I were very pro eating rice because we didn't want to ration on top of the rations that we had already been given, if that makes sense. Plus, we had one extra rice in the memory challenge. So we were like, well, an extra cup isn't going to hurt. Plus, we had not touched our rice to that point because we decided day one not to eat. The morning of day two, we had toast because we won half a loaf of bread. That's also in the bread loaf is where Josh found his idol clue. And then we had the sacked lunch. So some people were like, we don't need to eat. We've already eaten twice today. Whereas me and Megan were like, no, we need to eat. We haven't had enough calories. So we decided to have a vote on the tribe, a public vote about if we wanted to cook rice or not. Me and Megan voted yes. I think it was Carly and Sharif who said, no, we should not eat rice until tomorrow morning. And then everybody else was just like, it's whatever the tribe wants to do. Which is not helpful. So it was a 2-2. And I was like, well, we all want to take naps. Why don't we just like nap around for a couple of hours and then we'll take a revote later tonight and see if we're hungry. And Megan looks at me and goes, there's not going to be a revote. And I was like, okay, sounds good. And so I think what we agreed were the people who wanted to wait were just like, well, if people are hungry, like we can do it later tonight. So we like lounged around for a little bit, and like right as we were about to put the rice on, we get another tree mail, and we're like, are you joking? There's another challenge today? Like, yikes. And it was for immunity, and that is when we were all kind of like, okay, it's game on. I think there was a perception that our tribe got cocky from winning 4 challenges in a row. Basically 3 challenges and then the memory challenge. I don't think that's true at all. I think that we were very I think most of us were very aware that they outclassed us physically for the most part, and they had an extra number so they could choose who to sit out. We also were very aware that they had won more food in that memory challenge than us, so they might have been fueling up more, even though we had the sack lunch. So we were I think we went in pretty like humble, like, yeah, we've been on a winning streak, we have good chemistry, but anything could happen.
So before we get to the challenge,
Yes.
with your reward from that last reward challenge, you got pillows, blankets, popsicles, and you find an auto clue, correct?
Yeah, so that was actually a really funny story. So we get, is that the same? No, that's not. We got the extra tarp from the SOS challenge, right? Yeah. So we had the extra tarp, but we had not set up our new shelter yet. We planned on moving the shelter closer to the fire and also using the small tarp that we won as a reward as a blanket because we didn't want to freeze again like we did in night 1. You know, night 1, it was 55 degrees out there. So we cleaned off the tarp, the big tarp, and pulled it forward, but I had thrown the pillows and blankets on there because now at this point we have a pillow for everyone. Between the pillows that people have as luxury items, the ones we've won as rewards, and like clothing or other things that can be made into pillows. So we're like, okay, let's take everything off the big tarp, just put it on the small tarp, clean off the big tarp, pull it forward, and then put the small tarp on top of it. So we do that. We put the sleeping mats out because we also won sleeping mats, the yoga mat, whatever. And then people are like, oh, just like make a pile on top of the big tarp of all the pillows and blankets. So we did that. And then we leave to get firewood for a couple minutes. We come back. I'm the first one back with firewood. And there's a rolled up note sitting in the middle of the empty tarp in the middle of camp that fell out of the blanket when it was moved from one tarp to another. And it was just sitting there. And I was like, no one saw this. Like, I had been gone for like 10, 15 minutes from camp. And like, I know people left after me. It was just sitting rolled up in the middle of the tarp. And I was like, nobody saw this. This is the only thing on this tarp. It's in the middle of camp. So I just go and pick it up. I quickly leave back to go get more firewood. At this point, the sun is setting. I think I didn't read the clue until it was almost too dark to read. So this might have actually been after the immunity challenge that I found it. I don't think I found it till after the immunity challenge because I remember I couldn't read it when I first pulled it out because it was too dark. So I had to go back to camp and get the flashlight.
Barbara says she found her clue in her sack lunch of the boat trip. So you're right. Someone got that clue.
Barbara, my clue was more specific than yours, and I couldn't find it either. We'll get into that in a minute because that's a journey.
Yeah. So we'll get to now. Let's get to your first immunity challenge. This is kind of an obstacle course challenge that has kind of 2 puzzles, a ladder puzzle in the middle. Then you come back there and solve a final puzzle. How was this for you?
I felt really good going into this challenge. You know, when I saw what the obstacle course would be, I have decent agility. We were all a little bit worried for Barbara because she had hit her head earlier in the day on the slip and slide challenge. She bonked her head on the ground on the slip and slide. And we saw her marvelous front flip that she did in this challenge, but she killed it. We all felt good about this challenge. You know, we felt good about putting Josh on the ladder forming part because Josh had been very clear to us that very upfront with us that he was good at visual puzzles. We had Sharif climbing the ladder because he's tall. We had assigned, because the whole tribe was allowed to work on the puzzle, but we had assigned, I believe it was me, Julia, and Josh
Mhm.
to be on the final puzzle. And we were like, if anybody else sees anything, just swap out with somebody. So, you know, we start the challenge, we get into it, we're ahead, we get to the puzzle before the other tribe. And I don't know that we necessarily miscommunicated anything. That puzzle, we did it after being voted out. We did it a lot in the Ponderosa, practicing it. It's a very interesting puzzle in that it can be done in so many ways, but even with it having so many solutions, it's still extremely difficult.
Mhm.
So the other tribe gets there after us and their pieces fall into place. And the moment we lost, I was like, okay, this is it. Like, this is do or die for me. I really have to do something tonight because I know I'm in trouble here.
Mhm.
And we lost. And I was like, okay, the potential for me being first boot is definitely up there right now. So I have to get to work.
Mhm.
And we get back to camp. We were all very thrown off because we didn't get to eat rice before going to the challenge because they called us for a tree mail and the challenge right before we were about to eat. So we like each shoved down like a half a slice of bread before the challenge to like have a little bit of carbs to burn through. We got back, we discussed eating rice. We were kind of like, we'll just do it in the morning. Like it's the sun's setting anyways. We're going to go to bed soon. We decide kind of unspoken that like the scrambling is going to happen in the morning, but like if people want to have talks tonight, go for it. Wow, I'm just like realizing there's a lot that I've left out. So throughout this day, I'm noticing that there are a lot of duos and trios that are splitting off together. And it's not like the same duos and trios. It's like people are kind of rotating with each other. But the recurring ones that I'm noticing are Bash and Barbara, Josh and Barbara, Josh and Sharif, and then Julia and Carly. And there are times throughout the day where I'm seeing people walk off and I'm like, I want to be part of that conversation. And so I'm announcing to them, I'm like, hey, just letting you guys know, like I'm coming up behind you. If you need me to keep going or whatever, I'm just looking for firewood. And they would either say, yeah, just give us a minute. Or they would say like, oh yeah, sure. Come join the conversation, whatever. That was intentional. However, there were also times where I was genuinely just out like using the bathroom or looking for firewood or whatever, and I would run into other people. And I think they were a little weary of that. And there were times throughout the day where both Josh and Sharif would come up to me and they'd say, like, you have to let us have conversations. You're being paranoid. Stop following us. And I'm like, I'm not following you. I swear I'm not trying to follow you. There was one time that sticks out to me where after we did the slip and slide challenge where Sharif and Megan went to put their shoes up at the top of the path in the sunlight in the field where we had gone to look at the stars. They were bringing their shoes up there to dry because their shoes were wet. And Sharif asked me if he could bring my shoes up there too, because I wore shoes in that challenge as well. And I know obviously they're going to talk strategy on the way up and back. So in my head, I'm like, oh, it'd be beneficial for me to be part of that conversation. And so I'm like, oh, no, I want to warm up. So I'll go up there with you and I'll bring my shoes. And later, Sharif pointed out to me, like, obviously we were trying to talk. You should let us talk. So I think that happened a lot where there were people trying to have conversations and I either intruded or people felt like I was intruding. And that gave off the vibe to some people as paranoia, which I refuse to accept that I was being paranoid because I was correct. So I don't think that it was paranoia. But there was a time, I think it was before the last immunity challenge, where we had established kind of a majority. Obviously, it was a fake majority. They wanted, obviously, me, Josh, and Sharif were a trio, and they both felt good about Barbara, and they both felt good about Bash. So they were like, okay, let's have the 4 guys plus Barbara, and then we can pull in Megan probably to have a 6, and we'll vote out either Julia or Carly. And I'm like, okay, it's Julia or Carly. Sounds good. Little did I know, they were also going and telling Julia and Carly that I was the one throwing their names out and that I would be the vote. So I was not aware of that. But yeah, there were multiple times through the day where Bash, Josh, and Sharif would individually come up to me and be like, stop being paranoid. Like, let people talk. Like, you're safe. You just have to let other people have conversations. Like, you can't be the only one having conversations kind of thing. And so I was like, fine, I'm going to lay back a little bit. So whatever. We get back to camp. That is when I find the clue rolled up, because that's when we redid our shelter stuff. I get the clue. I go up the path. I can like kind of read it, but I go back and I grab the flashlight and I'm like, oh, my stomach is hurting. Like, oh, I think I really need to use the bathroom. So I get the flashlight. I go up. I read the clue. I find the tree where I think it is, but I don't have the machete with me. So I go back and I'm like, oh, silly me. I forgot the toilet paper and the machete. So I grab the toilet paper and the machete and I go back and I look at the tree for like 15, 20 minutes. I don't find anything. I come back and I'm like, oh, no, I couldn't use the bathroom. Like, maybe I'll try again later. Like, trying to give myself an easy way to leave camp later without being suspected. So then I pull aside Sharif and I'm like, hey, Sharif, let's go on a walk. Because at this point, there was a time where we were all 8 sitting in camp and like 3 people got and went up the path. And the other 5 of us were just sitting there and we just looked at each other and went, yep, it's time. Like, let's do it. So I got up and pulled Sharif aside. And in my mind, I had explored fully the area that the idol was hidden. And I had a tool to save myself, which was the idol clue.
Mm-hmm.
And if I couldn't find the idol with it, I was at least going to try to gain trust with it. And so in my mind, Sharif had been calling me paranoid all day. So if I show Sharif this idol clue, it shows that I'm not worried about his allyship. It gets him on my side. Sharif has a lot of sway on the tribe. People like Sharif. So maybe I can get him back on my side with this. I show Sharif the idol clue. He agrees that it's the same location I looked at. He and I look for like 10, 15 minutes. We don't find anything. We discuss that Bash, Barbara, and Megan have all been out actively looking for idols, and we agree that Megan probably has it because Megan all day was reinforcing like, hey guys, make sure you keep your bags with you. Make sure you keep your bags with you. So that happened. We were just like, Megan wants to keep her bag with her because she has the idol, whatever. Sharif was like, maybe we can go through her bag at some point. I was completely unwilling to do that. If he wanted to, though, I was not going to stop him. So we look, we decide that somebody else probably has it, but we agree in the morning to look again, or like in the middle of the night, morning, whatever, to look again. So he comes back. On the way back, he tells me like, hey, like, are you okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm a little weirded out because Barbara's not talking to me. So I go back to camp and I ask Barb if she wants to talk. Barbara's like, sure, just give me a few minutes, whatever. Barbara and I go up the trail. At this point, there are a couple of other side conversations being had, but like we had pretty much non-verbally agreed not to scramble tonight. So I have a talk with Barbara, and I noticed that Barbara had been really down all day because she had hit her head. So I pulled her aside and I said, you know, Barbara, out of the game, like game aside, how are you doing? Because like I've noticed you're maybe a little bit down today. We had talks about how she was worried because she had diabetes. Or she has diabetes, and so like her sugar was a little wonky. I tried to make sure she was keeping up with being hydrated and that. She had a headache from hitting her head earlier. She had just been down, and I could tell she wasn't feeling well. And so I wanted to make sure, you know, outside of the game that everything was okay. And she opened up to me a little bit about how she was a little bit worried that people were going to view her as like the easy vote because she was like the old woman or whatever. I didn't think she had anything to worry about because people really connected with her from day one. I told her that. I opened up to her a little bit about the emotional issues that I was having and like some of my past stuff. And then we talked a little bit about game. I know that Barbara was quite irritated with Julia and some of the things that Julia was doing around camp. And so I figured that Barbara would be okay with voting Julia. Barbara threw out Julia's name. I said, cool, we're doing Julia. Sounds good. That's what I've heard from everybody else. It should be a pretty clear vote. We'll tell Carly, I guess, in the morning. It should be a 7-1 vote plus the medallion vote against Sharif, against Julia. We come back to camp. That was like a very, very simplified version of like a 30-minute conversation. We get back to camp. We all start settling down for the night. We all actually sleep pretty well. I went to sleep rather quickly, woke up probably around 2-3 in the morning. And I see Josh is sitting at the fire. And I'm like, okay, I need to go look for the idol again. I decided that it would be, I couldn't keep my idol clue in my bag, because if Sharif was already bringing up going through people's bags to me, it was possible that he was bringing it up to other people. So when medical comes in twice a day, once in the morning and once at night, to give everybody any medications that they needed. So I memorized my clue word for word and put my clue in my acid reflux medication, so it got sent back to the house. So nobody else could find it. One of my only good strategic moves of the game. But I memorized my clue, and I got up in the middle of the night. Josh was up, and I was like, hey, I need the machete, the flashlight, and the toilet paper. I'm going to go try to use the bathroom again. Sharif did not wake up. I could have woken him up because he also slept beside me in the shelter, but that would have been really suspicious if me and Sharif went off in the night and Josh was awake. So I decided it wasn't worth waking him up. I go look for the idol for probably, honestly, like 20, 30 minutes more. It's not there. It's not there.
Do you know how close you were?
It was at a completely different tree that was, I believe, higher up the path. I mean, it wasn't close.
Okay.
So I go up, I look, I come back. Josh is like, any luck using the bathroom? I was like, no, it's just not happening. And Josh was like, oh, well, I need to use the bathroom now. So I stayed up and, stoked the fire a little bit. Josh takes the machete, the toilet paper, the flashlight, goes up the trail, but Josh doesn't go as far up the trail as I went. And so I could still see the flashlight moving around. And I was like, he's moving the flashlight that much. He's not using the bathroom. So Josh comes back, 20 minutes later. And I was like, did you use the bathroom? And he goes, no luck. And I was like, you were looking for idols. And he looks at me and goes, well, so were you. And I was like, fine, let's go look together. So we got together. I shared my idol clue with him because, again, I have to make a play with the tool that I have, and the tool I have is an idol clue. I tell him the idol clue. We look around the tree a little bit. It starts sprinkling at that point. And so we're like, we said if it rained, we would go wake everybody up so we could raise our tarp up. We go back to camp. We don't have the idol. We wake everybody up in the middle of the night. We are all up for like an hour redoing our shelter. We get our ponchos. Sharif and I had another talk because Sharif and I were the two people who went to the top of the trail to get the ponchos. We talked. We said we were going Julia. I told Sharif that I showed Josh the clue. Josh did not know that Sharif had seen it, but Sharif knew that Josh had seen it. We went back. We went to sleep. First thing in the morning, I wake up. I sit up. Barbara is asleep on one side of me. Julia is like down the tarp a little bit asleep. I turn around and Megan's sitting at the fire. And within 3 seconds of me waking up, Megan is like, come here, come here. And I'm like, okay, we're going. So yeah. Any questions before we get into the morning scramble?
Nope, go for it.
Okay. So we get into the morning scramble. Megan immediately calls me over. She's like, we're good with Julia, right? I was like, yeah, as far as I'm aware, it should be a 7-1 on Julia, knowing good and well that I'm getting votes. At that point, I see up the path that there are people in like twos having conversations. So I can't go look for the idol because the idol is also up the path. I have a quick conversation with Carly. The only strategic conversation I had with Carly the whole time, where I was asking her how she was feeling. She said what she told me was she doesn't care who goes out as long as it's not her, but she said that she had heard Julia. I said, I'm okay with Julia. So we'll do Julia. So apparently, like I said earlier, people were going behind me and telling Julia and Carly that I was throwing their names out, which was not true, but I was agreeing to vote them when other people were throwing their names out. Had a quick conversation with Barbara while she was idol hunting. Because she was, like I said, she was very open. She was like, I just can't find this idol. And so I had a quick conversation with Barbara saying, is the plan still the same? She said, yep, you should be good. I said, you're good too. We're voting Julia. Cool. Had a talk with Sharif and Josh. We were good on Julia. Sharif and Josh said, though, that they wanted to go reassure Julia to make sure that she didn't pull out an idol or anything. Because Josh, Sharif, and I couldn't find the idol, we thought that there was potential that Julia may have had it, but we were pretty certain she didn't.
Do you know what name Julia was being told?
Probably me.
Okay, and you knew at the time, like, I think Julia's voting me.
No, I
Okay.
did not think Julia was voting me. I was pretty sure that Barbara was voting me, Megan was voting me, and Carly was voting me. I thought that Julia was voting Carly
Mm-hmm.
because of a conversation that I'm about to tell you about.
Mm-hmm.
And then from my perspective, me, Sharif, Josh, and Bash were probably voting Julia, but I could see a world where the three of them flipped on me.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, it's up in the air.
Yeah.
So Josh and Sharif go to have a conversation with Julia. Now, from my perspective, what happened was I then get pulled over into that conversation. So it's me, Julia, Sharif, and Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And Sharif is like, Julia, run him through the plan. And they're like, okay, so the four of us are going to vote Carly. And then we have Megan as a fifth vote. And then Sharif looks at me and winks. And I'm like, okay, so this is the fake plan that they're telling Julia. But I'm like, why are they telling Julia to tell me a fake plan when I know that I'm the real plan and Julia's the actual fake plan? It was a lot of layers.
Mm-hmm.
So Julia was like, so we're voting Carly. But I did not think that Julia was actually involved in the majority because of how people talked about her. People were starting to get irritated with Julia.
Why are people getting irritated with her?
So two things. One was that in challenges, it felt like she was asking a lot of questions and like kind of obvious questions. And I've had this discussion with Julia, and that's the only reason I feel comfortable talking about it, because she and I have talked about it since the game. Like, they would explain the rules for a part of a challenge, and then she'd ask immediately, like, what are the rules for this part of the challenge? And that was irritating some people. And then I know some people at camp felt like she maybe wasn't doing a ton in camp life. Like, she was very good at nighttime about like being on fire duty and stuff like that. But it seemed, from what people were telling me, people were not thrilled about her like firewood gathering and stuff like that.
Okay.
So people were, especially Barbara. Barbara was just irritated at Julia. She didn't like how Julia blew on the fire, to be specific. I'm not making, and that's not shade towards Julia, and that's not shade towards Barbara. That's just like people have pet peeves. It happens. And so I was confident that Julia would not be included in the majority. So when Julia came to me and says that she's voting Carly and that we have the majority on Carly, I was like, okay, Julia's voting Carly. Plus, from my perspective, Julia and I had connected on day one, and she wouldn't want to vote me anyways. So that's a side thing. I'm like, cool, I don't have to worry about Julia voting for me. So now it can be a 4 to 3 to 1 as long as the 4 aren't on me. It doesn't matter what the other 3 do. So this is when something very interesting happened. I wish this would have been caught on camera because this would have been very fun to watch back. So Bash pulls me aside, because Bash is one of the only people I hadn't talked to that morning yet. Bash pulls me aside and says, they told me you have an idle clue. And I'm like, who told you I have an idle clue? And he like does this kind of thing, and he like nods over to the shelter, and the people sitting in that vicinity are Barbara, Josh, Sharif, and Julia. And Sharif is the closest to us. And so in my mind, I'm like, why would Sharif tell him that I have an idle clue? And I was like, when did he tell you? And Bash goes, so you do have one? And I was like, yeah, I'm just confused as to when they told you. And Bash goes, they didn't, you just did. However, I don't know. I've gotten so many different versions of this story from different people that I don't know what the situation is. Some people have told me that Sharif did actually tell Bash.
I'll have to ask Bash on Saturday, Sunday.
Yeah, but I don't know. Sorry, I have to plug my computer in. I don't know if Bash actually got me or if Sharif or Josh told Bash, but in that moment, from my perception, Bash got me. He got me to spill that I have an idle clue, which was not what I wanted to do because Bash and I had a lot of one-on-ones. The night before, Bash and I were up at the fire for, an hour and a half talking about life, talking about stuff. I trusted Bash when we went on the boat reward. Bash vapes, so he went outside a lot to vape when we were in the indoor portion, and I used the bathroom first. After I used the bathroom, I went outside and talked to Bash for 10, 15 minutes. We sat beside each other on the boat reward. I felt good with Bash as a person, and he felt good about me as a person. Bash actually did not want to vote me out, and we'll get into that in a minute. Bash was one of the only people who was pushing for me not to go. So in my head, I'm like, oh no, Bash just tricked me into telling him I have an idle clue. Sharif then walks up to us, and Bash tells Sharif, Drew has an idle clue. And Sharif's like, oh, you told him? And Sharif got so mad at me. Like, I can't even put into words how frustrated Sharif was at me in that moment. Like, he was borderline yelling at me. I thought he was extremely overreacting, and I still do. But he felt like I was putting him in a spot because Bash and Sharif had a duo as well. So Sharif felt like I was making him look dishonest because I told Sharif about the clue, but Sharif didn't tell Bash. So that makes Sharif look dishonest to Bash. So Sharif was mad at me for making him look dishonest to Bash. And Sharif was like low-key yelling at me. He was extremely mad. I told him he had the right to be as frustrated as he wanted because I was like, I cannot believe I did something that stupid. Yeah, you'll definitely have to ask Bash about if that was something that he did himself or if somebody actually told him, because I still don't know. But Sharif was really mad at me and like told me I was ruining his game and all this stuff, and I was just like, okay, like you're like, I didn't say it. I was like, but you're being really dramatic. Yeah, I had a couple of other check-ins with people just being like, are we good? Yeah, we're good, whatever. I knew I was being thrown out. So Bash and Sharif go off and talk after that interaction, and I presume that they're sorting things out from Sharif having left out that truth to Bash. Bash comes back to me, and he's like, so we're doing Julia, right? And I was like, yeah, but I'm worried. Has my name come out? And Bash and Sharif both mentioned, like, yeah, Julia and Carly we're throwing your name out, but you're fine. Like, we've got you. And I was like, okay. Sharif walks away. Bash goes, so what if I have another plan? And I was like, what? Like, you've just thrown me under the bus. What do you want from me? And he was like, I still think we can get the votes to do Carly. And at this point, I was like, no, we're like 20 minutes from Tribal. Like, I don't want to switch the vote to Carly. Let's just do Julia. She's the name that's out there. Barbara's irritated at her. I'm not thrilled with her. She's voting for Carly already. Like, let's just do Julia. And Bash is just sitting there like, what if I have a backup plan? And Sharif walks back up to us, and I looked at Sharif and I said, Sharif, he's trying to change the plan. And Sharif just goes, no, we're not doing that. We're not changing anything. And I was just like, sorry, it's too close to Tribal. Well, what I found out that Bash wanted to do, and this is secondhand, so you're gonna have to ask Bash about this. Bash did not want me to go. I know, right? It really is, Angela. So Bash comes up to me, and what he wanted to do is come up to me, tell me that they were all gonna vote me. Then go grab also Julia and Carly, who they were throwing under the bus to me, and say, hey, this is what's going on. The four of us vote Sharif. It'll be a 4-4 tie, and then Sharif goes out with the extra vote.
That'd be a 5-4. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what Bash wanted to do. Do I think that he could have executed that? Well, obviously he didn't, because I declined it. Sharif shut him down first. Then I was like, no, this is too complicated. And then I don't know if Julia and Carly would have gone for it. If we had more time, if this was at 10 minutes before Tribal and it was, an hour before Tribal, and Bash could sit them down and say, listen, they're telling you guys that he's throwing you out. They're telling him that you guys are throwing him out. Like, Drew, you're the actual target. All three of you are on the bottom. We can make this move right now. Like, would I have gone for it? Maybe. I mostly trusted Sharif at that point, but after he had just blown up on me, I was not thrilled with him. But it got shut down regardless. I spent a few more minutes looking for the idol. And then we head off to tribal. And going into tribal, I was like 90 to 95% certain that I was going out. I don't know. Any other questions about pre-tribal? I'm trying to think if there's anything I missed. I'm sure there is.
I think you hit everything. And so you were thinking like at best you were hoping for like a 4-3-1-1.
I mean, I knew going in that it was going to be whatever Sharif wanted to do. I was pretty confident. Yeah, I was hoping that the best I could do was a 4-3-1-1, and that the guys would vote with me for Julia. A couple of times in tribal where my percentage of knowing I was going out went up. The first one was when Amos asked Carly how they come to a decision, and Carly said tribe unity. That's when I was like, yeah, I know I've rubbed people the wrong way. Because I knew at that point that Barbara and Megan both just didn't like me. And then you can't see who people are voting for. But like when you turn, you know, most of the time you're going to hide your arm or whatever. Julia was like turned the opposite way. And so I could see that she was ending her vote in a W. And so I was like, well, if Julia's voting for me, like everybody else is too. Because Julia was the one person who I was like, I know she's not voting for me. Because I was pretty confident that she was not included on the plan and that she would be voting for Carly. So when I saw that W, I was like, 100%, I have no chance. I'm done here. And then the votes were read. It was a 6-2-1. Yeah, once I saw my name the first time, I was like, yep, okay. It's fine. And then come the antics to follow.
Yeah, so talk about
which I think got really misconstrued in the long run, but it's fine.
Talk about the decision to give Barbara the medallion versus like Josh or Reeve or someone else.
I had up to that point not thought about the medallion at all. So I get voted out. People are like, oh, sorry, Drew. I say, don't talk to me right now. Just as a joke. And I turned around after they sent the torch. I turned around and said, that was a joke. Like, I love all of you, whatever. And then Amos was like, the medallion. And I was like, oh, crap. So in my head, you know, I've been on juries before. I've had to make decisions that affect other players before. 90% of the time, my decisions are going to be based on how people treated me. If I was on the jury to decide who won the game, I would base my vote on how people treated me, because I've been, you know, mistreated a lot in my life. I've been bullied a lot in my life. And I had opened up to a couple people about a couple of things. And for Barbara, I felt like she did not give me the time of day all day on day 2. And she didn't seek me out for a discussion at all on the morning of day 3. And so I was like, well, I'm going to give it to Barbara. Plus she lied to me, telling me that I was safe multiple times. So I went up to Barbara and I gave my speech. I don't remember exactly what I said, but I said something along the lines of, you lied to me, which is true. Because I was told multiple times that I was safe. I thought we had made an emotional connection, which was not the right phrasing. I do wish that I could change that phrasing, because I think I made it seem like Barbara and I had like this deep personal thing going on. We did not. But we did have talks about like our fears in the game and stuff like that with each other. And while I had those discussions with other people as well, individually, I felt like all day 2, Barbara just didn't give me the time of day. And like I said, the morning of day 3 as well. And Barbara was one of the people who I 100% knew was at the spearhead of throwing my name out. I knew it was her, Megan, probably Josh. And I knew that Sharif was the other vote for Julia, because he had to save himself if I pulled out an idol. I wasn't going to vote out Sharif because I knew Sharif didn't want to vote for me. So I didn't want to give him the necklace. So it came down to Barbara or Megan. And I think that I didn't make as much of a connection with Megan. And so I didn't have as much to be frustrated at with Megan. So I gave it to Barbara. And I think the word choice I know it's
and
really
just
not that
saying your
dramatic,
exit wasn't
Angela.
half as bad as I was told it was. So I think
Oh, yes, yeah, we'll
it
get to
grew
that.
over the course of the
Oh,
game,
it
your
did.
exit.
It did. But like I didn't feel like in the moment I was making it this big dramatic thing, but I do understand now looking back how that could have affected especially Barbara, because I think the word choices that I made were very much like you backstabbed me. I think I used the word backstab. Like you backstabbed me, you lied to me. I thought we had this bond, like whatever. And then obviously because I think the word choices that I made were just a little bit strong for what it was. I'm really bad with word choice. Um, I say things at the wrong time. I say things too loudly, too abrasively, and that's something that I'm aware of. Um, but I think at that time, from Barbara's perspective, she was probably very thrown off, which is why she was confused. And then, of course, I had to take the moment and say, like, I don't know why you're looking confused. You know exactly what I'm talking about. Because in my mind, she did know what I was talking about. But that's what happened. I give it to Barbara, and I leave the game.
So I think you and Barbara have come to terms with it and figure it out, which is good to hear.
We will be having a chat soon where we work everything out with each other. We are fine. Barbara and I are fine. Immediately following the game, maybe not so much. We had some things that we needed to hash out. But I think we understand where each other were coming from now. But like I said, you know, when you get a group of 17 people together, not everybody is going to get along, even if there's not a game going on. You just bring together 17 strangers, and not everybody is going to get along. And I think, yes. And I think that's the case with me and Barbara. We just didn't get along in a game setting. So yeah, that happened. And then I got to go I think I got voted out at like 9 a.m. and I went and ate a can of Pringles and drank 2 glasses of wine. So in the shower.
So, let's do a hypothetical. Let's say
I love it.
You find the idol.
Mm-hmm.
Are you playing at that tribal council?
Yeah, 100%.
Who are you writing down then?
I have no regrets about my entire game, except for I wish I spent longer looking for the idol, because there were multiple times where I considered this is the wrong tree. And I had a couple of times gone up and down the path looking at other trees because I knew what side of the path it was on from the clue, and I knew that it was on the ground. And I knew a vague description of the tree from the clue. So I'm going, but I had, in every other time I'd gone up and down the path, I was like, it can't be this tree. It can't be this tree. Like, this is the only one right here that matches the description. So my only regret is not looking more for the idol. So had I played the idol, I can't say that my vote would have changed because I voted for Julia. If I had taken more time and really thought through, like, oh, if I actually get the majority and this idol is useful, it probably means Sharif didn't work with me. So if I had voted Sharif, Sharif would have gone out had I played an idol, because it would have been a 6-2-1 on Sharif. But Julia would have gone out based on how everything played out with the 2 votes. And then if we would have lost another challenge, I would have gone out definitely, unless I found another idol. So I don't know that it would have helped me very much in the long haul, unless I could have gotten to a swap. And obviously, if I had made it to a swap, I would have flipped very quickly.
So Justin asks, like, is there a single decision that you go back and do differently?
Yeah, yelling at my tribe pre-challenge probably was not the best move of my career. I just, and what everybody had told me is that leading up to that moment, like, my name was in the air because I hadn't had any like clashes with anybody. I think it was just like there were multiple different viewpoints going on. You know, a couple people told me post game, like, you were way too big of a social threat, you were way too likable, and I didn't want that. And like I believed them. Like I don't know. They were just like, yeah, your energy, you're having too much fun. No. There were a couple people who were just like, yeah, your personality was way too much for me and I didn't like it, so I wanted that out of my hair. There were a couple of people who were like, you're way too good physically. There were a couple of people who were like, you know, we see you out here looking for idols. There were a couple of people who were like, yeah, you're paranoid. It was just like a lot of little things compounding for people. But my name was up in the air until that moment at the challenge when I yelled at my team to get in the line so I could demonstrate something. And everyone has told me that that is the moment that my name was solidified as the first vote.
So how was the pre-jury experience?
my
How was the
gosh.
pre-jury Drew crew?
So I got voted out. I got to the house, and production kind of ran me through like, okay, you can get your phone, you can shower, like you can watch challenges, but like from a distance, whatever. So also the moment I get voted out, production's like, man, if you were on that other tribe. And I was like, what? And they were like, yeah, the other tribe are all people who are similar to you. They were like, all of the other tribe are big personalities trying not to be big personalities, but failing. And I was like, that's exactly what I did. So yeah, I was like, darn, if only. So I get there. A couple of hours later, Julia joins me. I was not at all bitter at Julia.
Mhm.
I gave her a big hug coming in. We bonded really quickly, and Julia and I went back and started watching confessionals from our tribe from the first couple of days.
Mhm.
And I think that is where I kind of realized how much more I had messed up than I thought I did.
Mhm.
Because like I said, coming in, I wanted to be, 100% social in the pre-swap.
Mhm.
Just getting people to like me and like hearing people's confessionals about me. I don't think anybody was too mean. But like just hearing from people how like weary they are of me and like people not liking necessarily my personality, I was like, okay, this is something I can learn. If I ever were to do something like this again,
Mhm.
maybe I can't be fully my full personality all the time on a level 10. So that was fun. Megs joined us. I had never met Megs. I love Megs. And me, Julie, and Megs bonded pretty quickly. The next day, joining us, they had the swap. And then Carly joined us.
Mhm.
Carly was a lot of fun because when she joined us at pre-jury, she came in and she was like really loud and assertive and like bombastic. And I was like, what is this? I didn't see any of that in the game. In the game, she was like by far the quietest person on
Mhm.
our original tribe. And then Dina joined, and Dina was a lot of fun. And the 5 of us got pretty close on pre-jury. We had a lot of fun. We went to the final tribal council dressed up in our nice outfits, and we got some good photos together. Yeah, I mean, pre-jury was fun. We went on a couple trips into town. We hung out a lot. We got to test some challenges out. I think there's going to be a pre-jury versus production endurance challenge. The one where they had to stack
Mhm.
the skeets on top of each other. We did that one, production versus pre-jury, and filmed it. So that might be posted at some point soon. That was a really fun one. But yeah, it was really fun to kind of watch the game and get to go back and look through everybody's confessionals and hear what people were saying at camp. That was a lot of fun. It was a little traumatizing for a few days because, again, I think for me, I think one of my bigger problems that I'm now aware of is that maybe I don't have the best perception of where I stand with other people.
Mhm.
Um, I think I just have bad self-awareness sometimes because, like I said, I was raised in an environment where like people can interrupt each other and cut people off and yell over top of each other. And people at camp obviously did not like that. And like, they
Mhm.
don't know me. So if this isn't like oh, that's Drew, we can let it go kind of thing. It's like oh, this person's kind of rude
Mhm.
situation. And so I think that was a good learning experience to get to go back and hear, what people were thinking about me and how I can make adjustments for future games. I don't know. I just get excited and I get loud and I interrupt people. And yeah, I don't know. The rest of the week was fine. Obviously, we had people that we were rooting
Mhm.
against. For each of us, those were different people. Um, and then we went to the finale, and I think I was extremely happy to see Angela win.
Mhm.
I think once jury hit, pre-jury got a little bit distracted with doing other things, so we weren't watching the game as
Mhm.
closely. Um, but yeah, it was really fun. I was rooting for Angela. I was rooting for Storm. I was rooting for Lauren. I was rooting for Bash. Um, yeah, I mean, it was a fun game to watch.
Do you know who you would have voted for if you had been on jury?
Okay, so I was there at Final Tribal Council. I was there in person. We were off to the side, dressed to the nines. I'm gonna say, I said earlier, anytime I vote for a winner, it's based on how people treated me in the game.
Mhm.
But unfortunately, because I had not been on a tribe with Angela or Storm, I didn't have a really good gauge as to how they treated people.
Mm-hmm.
All I could go based off of was how Dina and Megs talked about them on pre-jury.
Mm-hmm.
From what I saw, I'm 95% sure I would have voted for Angela.
Mm-hmm.
The 5% was Bash, but Bash also had one of the worst final tribal councils I've ever seen in my entire life. Like sugar Gabon levels of bad. And he won't care that I say that. I wanted to vote for Bash because I think Bash played a really fluid and chaotic game, and I love chaos.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm like 95% sure I would have voted for Angela. I don't think I could have excused myself for voting for anyone else.
Mm-hmm. So as we wrap up here, I'm going to kind of throw some couple of rapid fire questions at you, just get your quick takes. So for you, what was your lowest point in the game?
Day 2, all of day 2.
No,
No, my lowest point in the game, I think there was a point where like 6 or 7 of us were sitting in the shelter, and I just realized that there were a bunch of conversations, not even game conversations, but just conversations that were happening around me, like people talking around me, but no one talking to me. And whenever I would, say my part in a conversation, I wouldn't really be acknowledged, and the people in the conversation would just move on. And so I had like almost a flashback of like growing up and being bullied and like not included in things. And there was a moment in day 2 where I got up and I left camp for like 10 minutes. I didn't go far because I didn't want it to be like a thing. But I went to a spot in the path that was like open, no canopy above it, and sunny. And I just laid there to like warm up. And it was like 20 yards from camp. And I just sat there and I was like, I'm in trouble here. Like, these people don't like me, and there's nothing I can do to change it now because I've already made my first impression. And that was the lowest point for me. And I was very grateful that Josh and Sharif came to me like 15 minutes later, and they were like, hey, is everything okay? And I was like, yeah, I'm fine. I just wanted to warm up. But that was definitely the lowest point for me, was just like realizing, like it sinking in that like, oh, like this is not going well for me socially.
What was your highest point?
Winning my point in the slip and slide challenge. Definitely. I had, like I said, 0 expectations of myself physically, and I was extremely happy when I got that point.
Who surprised you the most out there?
Oh gosh. Probably Megan. Like I said, Megan and I did not vibe. We did not like each other when I was in the game. I'm not gonna lie, like when I got voted out, I was very anti-Megan. I didn't like pitch to the pre-jury or anything that I was anti-Megan, but like I was not thrilled with Megan. But to see how well that she was able to adjust and get in with these other people, and then once merge hit, her steam started really picking up, and I was really impressed with the level of gameplay that she was able to execute, being that good in challenges and that good socially. And by Final Four, I was really sad to see Megan get voted out because I was rooting for Megan the most to win at that point. So I think that really shocked me. Just like from like once you're not in the game, you can see more, how these people are playing. And I think Megan did a great job. She really surprised me because I didn't think that she would make it much further past where I was, because I knew that a couple of people were getting irritated with her in the same ways that they were getting irritated with me.
So if you had to pick one player to come back and play with you in Reelfoot, like in a duo season, what player would it be?
From this season? Oh, in your season. Okay.
Yeah, not my season, your season.
Dynamic duos. Who was I a dynamic duo with?
Or just like one person you'd like to play with. Well, maybe you didn't have a chance to.
I love my starting tribe, but I love the other tribe as well. I think somebody who I really, really connected with, there are 3 people actually from the other tribe who I really connected with, and I would be glad to come back and play with any of them. The first one is Dina. Dina and I really connected on pre-jury, and I think that me and Dina together would be absolute chaos in the best way. There would never be a dull moment. So I'd love to come back and play with Dina. Another person is Lauren. I think Lauren and I actually have really similar personalities where we're both really sarcastic and we're both kind of witty and snappy. And Lauren and I have really connected since the game. And then the last person who I was really excited to connect with once I was allowed to talk to them was KC. So the jury is sequestered from everybody else in the house. And but because we do live in the same house, sometimes pre-jury members and jury members would see each other. And it was another thing with Casey and I, after he was voted out, where he and I would have a lot of extended eye contact, or like we'd walk past each other and he'd be like, man, I'm really excited to talk to you. Or what production allowed us to do for each jury member as they came into the house, pre-jury was allowed to give each person a hug. And that's it. No verbal contact, anything like that. Casey came up to me and hugged me and said, I can't wait to talk to you and get to know you. And I was like, oh, this dude, I wish I could have played with this dude. So yeah, I would say those three people. Everybody from my tribe, don't need them. No, I'm just they had their chance to work with me.
Do you have any favorite camp life moments?
Favorite camp life moments? I mean, it was really interesting having everybody wake up in the middle of the night to completely adjust the shelter. And it was really funny because me and Josh were the only ones awake, and we're operating on like a 3 out of 10. Like we're barely awake. And the moment we felt a drop of rain and everybody else heard the rain, we were up, we were at a 10. We were adjusting everything we needed to. We got our ponchos. We were going at full force for an hour, collecting more firewood, getting everything under the shelter, figuring out new sleeping positions. And then the moment it was set up, we were all knocked back out immediately. And that was just a really fun night where we were all having the same mission. There was no strategy in mind. It was just like, okay, we want us all to be as comfortable as possible and have this living condition be as good as possible. And that was just a really fun moment where we were all on the same page about something.
Would you rather be in a 45-minute conversation about Marvel movies or 45-minute conversation about Star Wars movies?
Well, at least I have knowledge on Star Wars. The correct, what is the answer? I'll say Star Wars. Sure, why not? At least I know something about that. But let's be very clear. I was not in that conversation. I tried so much to be in that conversation, but once I figured out I was hitting a wall, I just laid there.
If you played another live reality game, would you play down your Survivor fandom again?
Would I what again?
Would you play down your Survivor fandom?
No, I can't anymore. People will have seen me now. No, I mean, there's no point. And I mean, I wish that I didn't this time, but once I set the lie in motion, you can't go back and be like, well, I lied earlier. So, yeah.
And I guess my final question, what is your takeaway from your season? What was your takeaway from your experience?
I think the biggest thing, so before leading up to this experience, I took a lot of time to meditate and pray and, ask for, give me what I need out of this experience. Whether that be a win, whether that be, overcoming something emotionally or physically or whatever. But, I asked God, the universe, to give me what I needed from the experience. And I was first boot. I took it better than I thought I would, shockingly. Based on what was shown at Tribal Council, you wouldn't think that I took it that great, but I was okay. And then I took time to reflect, and I was like, I didn't get anything out of this game because Pete told us all, like, leading up to the season, like, it's going to change you from first boot to winner. I was like, I didn't get anything. And then the week progressed. And at the end of the week, I got exactly what I needed, and I got friends. I made so many friends, players and production. Having a whole week to connect with production members was just amazing. And then obviously the pre-jury got really tight. And then once we were allowed to talk to, the jurors and the finalists, I was just really grateful for the experience and the friends that I was able to make. I would love to come back and be on production. I've told production that multiple times. Because I think that Reelfoot really is something special, and I think it's a great thing, and anything that I can add to it to help build it up is worth it to me because of the experience that I was provided through Reelfoot.
And one final question. I know you were asked this in your exit interview, but would you play another live game?
I would play Reelfoot again. I'd play other live games. If they asked me to come out next week, I would. I can't say no to things like that. I know for all of us, I think I don't remember who mentioned this. I think Storm mentioned this in his deep dive.
Mhm.
But the week following Reelfoot, we were all a little bit down. I think mental recovery from these games is a little bit hard, an emotional recovery from these games. And just like knowing that even if I go lower than I was this time, because I had a hard time adjusting back too. It's rough when you go back from living with 40 people in a house, and then you come back to your apartment where you're living by yourself, and all your friends now are long distance. But even through all that, like I would play another live game in a heartbeat, just knowing that like what I can get out of the experience, and knowing that I have all these people who are here for me.
Well, Drew, I think that's all for me. Unless is there anything else you want to add?
Is there anything else I want to add? Vote for me for fan favorite. No, it was a great experience. Like I said, I'd love to play again. Bring me back for a Blood versus Water, for a second chances, for a captain season. I don't care. I'm not an all-star. I don't qualify for that, I don't think. But bring me back for anything. I had great confessionals.
Well, Drew, thank you so much for your time this morning, especially so early, the talk through your game. I really appreciate it. For those who are tuning in, thank you so much. This is the 5th interview of this cast, with more to come. I'll be talking to Bash this Sunday at 7 p.m. And then next week, I'm talking to Lauren on Monday and Megan on Wednesday. And then I am out of town for 4th of July. And so interviews will resume when I get back from my vacation. So stay tuned for all that. And Drew, thank you once again. And yeah, everyone, thank you for tuning in.